Welcome to TOMMO'S Race CHINWAG, your favourite Formula 1 podcast produced by a British biased bloke with a massive Swede full of very questionable wheel knowledge. Broadcast live on YouTube and after the fact on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have a good old natter about each and every Grand Prix of the season. My name's Tommo, let's talk about it. Bit of an impromptu one today. Don't get used to this post-qualifying streams, but we're here on a Saturday, up bright and early for Suzuka this morning. I specifically want to cover this one because, of course, this is the first representative session we're seeing between Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull. But also, it was a very, very exciting qualifying. So it's fun to talk about. And I've got a bit of time, so we're jumping on it. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, live in the chat on YouTube. Patrick, Drew, Professor Z, Saibo, Pranav, Seamus, Alex, and the rest of you. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, don't forget to like as well, subscribe, rate, interact, however you please. Okay. That would be much appreciated. Much appreciated on pole. Now, I did predict Max to win this weekend in my pre-race CHINWAG. I didn't expect him to put it on pole. To be honest, I felt that the trickiness in this car that he's been struggling with, as well as his teammate, well documented, was going to maybe take the sheen off. You know, front row, I wouldn't have been surprised, certainly first two rows, but to put it on pole, very, very, very impressive. If you've not watched Max's pole position lap back, would thoroughly recommend it. It is chef's kiss. Phenomenal. Thing is, you do have to say, you know, Oscar in the first runs in Q3 went quickest. On Oscar's final lap as well, he went purple sector 2 and 3, but lost 0.3 in the first sector, did Oscar. So you got to say, as much as opportunity taken from Max, also certainly opportunity missed from the McLarens. Lando seemed to think afterwards that he'd extracted the most out of his package. Oscar clearly had more to give. If he hadn't lost those 3 attempts, I think it was turn 2 where he lost most of that time, then he could have been on for pole position, absolutely. But you got to get the job done, right? It's kind of like, you know, you look back at Max's lap in Saudi, whatever year that was that 21 in Saudi, when it was unbelievable, and then he hit the wall. Then you got to finish the lap. Oscar didn't start the lap. Max got pole. Max didn't finish that lap that time out and missed out. It was good. It was very, very good from Max. He absolutely smashed it. Charles Leclerc, P4 in a tricky Ferrari. And we'll get into the details. George Russell, P5. Kimi Antonelli, P6. George Russell expecting more. He said post-quali, that he tried something different setup-wise for that final Q3, those final 2 laps in Q3. And it kind of got away with from him. So not entirely happily. And Kimi Antonelli was saying afterwards as well, you know, he was kind of at a loss early in practice, right? Good thing he had FP1, 2 and 3 because it took Kimi a while to get on top of things. And P6, given all things, got to be fairly satisfied with that. Isaac Hadjar, back-to-back P7s in qualifying. Unbelievable job from Isaac, the second best performing Red Bull driver on the day. Lewis Hamilton, P8, struggling. Difficult, challenging Ferrari, not playing ball with either Charles or Lewis right now, so it seems. However, P8 still top 10. I guess it could have been worse. Alex Albon, P9, got to be happy with that. Ollie Behrman, P10. A stonking lap from the boy from Essex, my fellow Essex boy. And he did a great job in quali, did Ollie. And then Pierre, P11, Sainz, P12 will take a 3-place drop for blocking Lewis in qualifying. So, again, maybe Lewis could have extracted more from his final Q3 time, but Carlos Sainz got in the way. Shame. Alonso, P13. Lawson, P14. Lawson just squeezed through to Q2 in the end. Out-qualified by Hadjar. Hadjar, obviously, P7 in the end, but 1 position ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in P15. We'll get into the details. I want to take a look at Max and Yuki's laps and just kind of talk over Yuki's weekend so far. Because all in all, even though on the face of it, this doesn't look great, cautiously optimistic from what we've seen so far, it is looking like, from again, a very, very small sample size, and we'll never be able to truly say how good Liam could have got in this car on his best weekends. But I'm optimistic. we know Yuki knows this track well as well. That's going to play into it, but we'll see. We'll see. Hulkenberg P16, Bortoleto P17, only fractionally missing out on Q2. I think Nico was 16 thousandths off the gap to Q2. Bortoleto just fractionally behind Nico. Them two are super, super close in qualifying. You'll see that in the next slide. Ocon P18, not able to deliver the performance of Ollie this weekend in qualifying anyway. Jack Doohan P19. Look, given he missed FP1, horrific shunt, FP2, which we'll cover, I guess, because I think there's a bit of confusion as to what exactly happened with Jack's crash. To put it where he did, P19, it's not great, but I think given the lack of running, you can kind of forgive him for that, but it was his mistake at the end of the day. It was his mistake in FP2 that caused the shunt, and he suffered the consequences for it. And then Lance Stroll, P20, stone dead last. Shame for Lance. However, he did make a mistake on one of his final push laps anyway. So not too great from Sir Lancelot, but his streaks come to an end because he started things fairly well and then it kind of fell away a little bit for Lance. Never mind. Shame. Not the best day in the office for him. Cool. So qualifying head-to-heads. Again, I'm doing my best to kind of track all of the quali head-to-head statistics throughout the course of the season. It's one of them that I'm trying to look at representative times, try and remove outliers, looking at the furthest session both drivers reach, and then taking that average, rather than looking at head-to-heads in terms of, head-to-heads in terms of like 24-0, or 12-12. Well, if the average gap on 24-0 is half a tenth, and they just always happen to, it's not, that doesn't tell the full story, right? So the aim, the ambition is to tell a more complete story with these head-to-heads. So, how did we do? Well, these are the updated numbers. I'm not including Verstappen versus Verstappen versus Lawson and Hadjar versus Tsunoda because the graphic looks nice in the 10. I'm not having 12 lines, okay? Because then we're going to get Bortoletto's going to inevitably... Sorry, not Bortoletto. He's already in a seat. You're going to get Colapinto jumping in a seat, replacing Doohan inevitably, right? I'm sure that's going to happen at some point in the season. Probably someone else will jump in and it will just get out of hand. So I'm just going to look at the 10 current drivers on the grid, and you're going to have to be happy with that, and you're going to have to accept it, okay? I'm trying my best here. So, 0.498 was the gap between Verstappen and Lawson. Sorry, Tsunoda, my God. was the gap between... Well, Cadillac are joining next year, McFillin, so I can redo the graphics for 11 teams then. That's fine, but not this year. 498 was the gap between Verstappen and Tsunoda in Q2, their quickest Q2 times. Which again, look, that's the difference between P3, which Max was in Q2, and P15, Yuki Tsunoda. Less than half a second. That just shows, that really illustrates now just how close the field is, right? It's mad. Even in Q3, I think Alex in P9, I want to say, between Max on pole was like 6.5 tenths. Damn, that's a lot. Max only did one lap in Q2. Yeah, he did. That was his choice. I'm comparing. They're still representative laps. So yeah, 0.498 is the gap off of that tiny sample size we have. So that is the biggest gap on average, but it's only one session. Russell Antonelli, 0.435. So George is consistently, and I think George is doing an unbelievable job. Was expecting more from him in Q3. To be honest, I think he was expecting more. He tried something funky with the setup, didn't play off. But also, yeah, Antonelli is going to take time to get up to speed. Of course he is, and of course Mercedes is going to give him that time, which of course can't be said for all. But if Max didn't set a second lap, I can't use that. I have to create a system, okay, and it's not always going to be perfect, but it is what it is, right? So Max didn't set a second lap, Yuki did, but 0.498 is still a representative gap that I'm happy to stick by. So it is what it is. Albon Sainz 0.352. Alex once again, that's 4 and 4 now, ahead of Carlos Sainz in qualifying. But this was a very, very small margin. Very, very small margin between the two this time out. In fact, I'll get my little get my little quali head-to-heads X. Well, it's not an Excel sheet. It's a Google Sheets, because I ain't paying for Excel. Up. Yeah, this time out, Albon and Sainz, there was only 53 thousandths of a second between Albon and Sainz, but it was advantage Albon, and it was enough to get him into Q3. Then Behrman Ocon. Now, of course, we couldn't compare Ollie and Esteban, the first qualifying session of the year, because Ollie was busy shunting in practice and then didn't get a quali run in Australia. But in the 3 subsequent quali sessions, so China Sprint quali, China Normal quali, and then Japan quali, it is 0.236 in favour of Ollie Behrman. 0.468 clear of Esteban in Q1 was Ollie. So, you know what? Over a good. That's not a good sample set. Let's be honest. 3 is not a good sample set. So far, Ollie's doing a very, very favourable job relative to Esteban, but we'll see if that continues. Pierre Gasly over Jack Doohan. Now, up until this weekend, it's been very, very close between Pierre and Jack in qualifying. However, Pierre dunked 0.7, 0.691 on Doohan this weekend in qualifying, which means their average gap moves up to 0.178. So still not crazy. It's 4 quali sessions, marginal for the first 3. Big advantage Pierre this time out. I'm not surprised. Again, Jack, 0 FP1 running, massive shunt in FP2. That's obviously going to knock his confidence somewhat. So, you know what? Game's the game, all right? You take it as it is. Hajar Lawson. Look, again, Hajar Lawson, you look at P7 and P14, and it tells one story, but actually their gap in Q2 was just 0.131, but it was advantage Isaac Hajar, who continues to do an unbelievable job. There's Isaac. So credit to him. One gap, 0.131. Lawson wasn't fully happy after qualifying. I think he was... Look, inevitably, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Liam to regain his confidence. Also, he didn't, just like Yuki, obviously he didn't do practice in this car. This Racing Bulls will have evolved from the car he drove last year. It will still be fundamentally very similar. It's also interesting that Lawson, of course, because he's replaced Yuki, he's now on the other side of the garage to what he was last year. So he's got a different performance engineer, which I think is quite interesting. Liam's performance engineer, race engineer, on the radio, is now Isaac's race engineer. So it's kind of an interesting little difference there that I hadn't really considered until it was pointed out by, I think, Ted pointed out. Piastri Norris, it's still advantage Piastri over 4 qualifying sessions, 0.125. This time out, though, very marginal between the two of them, 32 thousandths of a second advantage Lando. However, it's still Oscar ahead. It's 2-2 in qualifying head-to-head, but Oscar has... it's that gap. It's that China sprint quali gap. Oscar put 4.5 tenths on Lando that has, it is extended the gap between the two of them, but still very marginal between Oscar and Lando. Also, apologies for any sniffing, because hay fever is having its way with me right now. The pain, okay? The pain. Welcome to everyone who's live for the first time at all, Jamin, as well. Good to see you. Thank you for coming along. And then we have Leclerc Hamilton. Obviously, Charles put a few tenths on Lewis this time out. However, it was also 2-2. Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton in quali head-to-head. Always been within a couple of tenths before this time out. But again, Lewis didn't get to set a final lap. So, I'm comparing their best laps in Q3. Lewis did get a push lap in Q3. So it's one of them. It's debatable whether I should include it, and you always just I'm just gonna have to kind of look and interpret and be like, right, is it fair to compare these laps? I think it is, but I get it. It may be a bit harsh on Lewis, but Carlos Sainz got in the way, so annoying for Lewis. Annoying for Lewis, absolutely. But yeah, 0.5057 is their average gap now between the two of them. Looking like Zara's next top model. This is actually another Carhartt special. I love my Carhartt. Happy day. Cool. Right. Oh, was it Q2 who's blocked in? Oh, it was Q2 who was blocked in. Sorry. Yeah. This is why it's great having a live chat, because you call me out on my stupidity immediately. So that's great. No, so actually it's fine then. So I don't actually have to. So it's actually fine with the quality head-to-head. I don't need to worry about that then. I was so sure that was Q3, but of course Science didn't get to Q3, did he? I am a fool. There you go. Thank you, chat, for keeping me in line. I appreciate that. And then Alonso Stroll, another dub for Fernando. Oh, it has been marginal though, actually. You know, it is technically 3-1 to Alonso, but it's been so marginal between the two of them. This was the biggest gap, 0.182. But again, if Lance had not cocked up his lap, seemed to catch a bit of wind in the S's, who knows, maybe he'd have improved. And it has, you got to say, over a lap in the 4 sessions we've seen so far this year, Alonso Stroll's been very marginal. I think Lance has probably taken a bit of a step up. However, he did make a mistake, which has always been the thing. It's the inconsistency from Lance. You know, when does he... all too often, the promise is there and he won't clutch up. He'll make a mistake. And this is a prime example of that, because I think Lance's pace is there, but he's not clutching up enough. And the gap is small. As we go down, the gaps are getting smaller between teammates ultimately. So I think fair play to Stroll is better and Alonso is also worse. Drew, do you reckon? No, Tomato, we told you about Stroll. Look. The points come on Sunday. I'm sure Stroll last to first challenge in the rain in Suzuka. It's happening, okay? It's happening. And then may I add the head-to-head comparison in numbers? You know what? I won't, Vladislav. I'm not going to add the head-to-head numbers to these, just because I don't think they're actually... I think this is way more informative and representative than a head-to-head number. And everyone posts head-to-head numbers, so you can find them very easily. I want to focus in on these actual average deltas, because I feel like this is... You know, if I'm looking at drivers, I'm doing my videos, I'm doing my research, and I'm building my own opinions of this sport and how these drivers are performing, I think this is a fairer, more representative thing than head-to-heads, you know. Plus, you know, the more stuff on screen is just, it's busy enough as it is. So I'm happy with it as it is. I've seen enough time to swap Padra and Sonoda. Brilliant. All right, Helmut's burner account is Kerwan99 apparently. And then finally, Hulkenberg Bortoleto, only 18 thousandths of a second average gap. Advantage Hulkenberg over 4 qualifying sessions so far. So it's 2-2 in head-to-head, if you want the head-to-head. And yeah, first time out, Bortoleto was 63 thousandths quicker. Then he was 0.136 quicker. But then it's gone back to Nico. Nico was 0.22 quicker last time out. Yeah, that's right. And then this time out, it was 52 thousandths quicker. So that all averages out 18 thousandths of a second. Gabriel Bortoleto, especially how much of a demon Hulkenberg is over a lap, by the way. And we've seen him prove this, not just at Haas, when he filled in at Racing Point and put it on the top in the top 3 in quali. Listen, we know Hulk can cook over a lap, and Gabriel is matching him every step of the way. I am very, very impressed. And you know what? I'm glad, because I know that, obviously, you know, any predictions you make, pre-season predictions, I think I feel like I backed the rookies quite heavily. I backed, you know, head-to-head wise, I backed Bortoleto over Hulkenberg for the season, Behrman over, Ocon. Did I back any other rookies over? Maybe it was just them two. Not Antonelli over Russell. Not Hadjar over Sonoda, but now they've swapped places, so that kind of chucks that one in the air. I don't think I did Doohan over Gasly either, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm feeling good about Gabby. I'm feeling good about Isaac. I'm feeling good about Ollie. Jack, I hope it works out for him, but I don't think he's going to get the time. But time will tell, won't it? Time will tell. So those are the head-to-heads. Well done, Max. Well done, Gabrielle, for keeping things nice and close with your teammates. Also, yeah, I guess to briefly go over what happened with Doohan in FP2 to anyone who doesn't know, and we've heard a lot of different things because it was like, oh, is the DRS open? Did he bottom out? Blah, blah, blah. So kind of unusual, really. So the way Jack was approaching turn 1 at Suzuka on the simulator was to not switch DRS off, and it was working for him on the sim, and no one in the team picked it up as such. Now at Suzuka, you have to manually switch the DRS off going into turn 1. Because these cars have so much downforce, you don't need to brake into turn 1. You can take turn 1 flat, obviously depending on fuel load, etc., etc. So you see most drivers will, DRS on as they go down the straight, and then DRS off just before they turn in. Jack didn't do it. And it wasn't a mistake. Obviously, it was a mistake, but it's not like Jack didn't turn it off by accident. Because also, you can switch the DRS off by engaging the brake. So you put the brake on and the DRS will automatically switch off. Essentially, he kind of set himself up for failure. And the way that, which is a failure on his side and a failure on the team side ultimately, because the way Jack was approaching that corner, if he hadn't have crashed then, he would have crashed eventually. Because you saw how quickly he lost it. And again, it was a mistake, but also it kind of, the intent was to drive the corner in that way and to do that. So, it's not good. It's not great. It's, I'm glad he's all right, because that was a scary shunt. But yeah, you've got to kind of ultimately put the responsibility on Jack first and foremost. But also, I think the team, you'd have thought, I don't know, like, I've not seen Pierre's approach to that. I was guessing in practice he was manually turning it off as well, like every other driver was pretty much. But yeah, to then not pick up that Jack was taking that approach and then he has that accident seems a bit strange to me. We'll see. But yeah, at least he's all right. That's the main thing. Okay. Max versus Yuki. Let's talk about it then, shall we? This is the main point of doing this stream now, because I want to go into a little bit more of the details of how they performed relative to one another in qualifying. Obviously, in practice, FP1 looked very, very strong from Yuki. You've got to say, first time in that car. He was competitive up towards the front. His final time was third, right? Or top 5, I want to say, for Yuki. And within like a 10th, I think, of Max, wherever it was. It was looking good. FP2, obviously the track kept catching fire, and Alonso and Doohan had their incidents. So based off of what we kind of got to see in practice, I think Yuki compared fairly well. How much do you read into practice? Of course, it's hard, right? You don't know fuel loads. Then you've got, Yuki, the pressure of home Grand Prix, which is really lent into. I think Yuki's really thriving in this, and I do think he's mentally ready for this challenge. I do. I've been really impressed with how he's kind of carried himself and the answers he's given, and et cetera, et cetera. So that side of things is looking strong. But of course, you don't know until you actually get into these competitive sessions. Would it rain tomorrow at Avkid? Possibly. It seems like more of a possibility. So we'll see. But yeah, what I want to do, thank you as always to F1 Tempo, f1tempo.com, where you can put in the year, you can look at qualifying sessions, you can look at practice, you can look at loads of stuff, right? Compare loads of years. f1tempo.com if you need any deets. That's the place to go, right? And looking here at, so again, this line here dictates, right, this is Q1, this is Q2, does that do? Actually, no, that doesn't do that. Oh, I've misread that. Regardless, right? The white line is Yuki, do you see? TSU white. And the blue line is Verstappen. And obviously their first two sets of laps. These were in Q1, so lap 2, lap 5. Yuki's 0.3 off in their first comparable laps in Q1, and then basically the same with their second comparable laps in Q1. So again, Q1 looked good. Yuki cooking relative to Max. Obviously, you know, Q1 and Q2 and Q3 are different sessions where you're pushing to different levels, and it does feel like it's when you're looking for that final percentage points, you know. Driving up to 98, 99% in the Red Bull is one thing. Driving from 99 to 100% in that Red Bull, that's where Max thrives, and we saw that when he put it on pole. So in Q1, Yuki was able to be close, and these are favourable numbers, right? In Yuki's favour. Very, very, very good. Very impressive. Then obviously Q2 comes along, and Yuki, in these times, that's 6.5 tenths. The gap there, and then Yuki improved slightly. Max didn't set a second time, because then these are Max's 2 Q3 times here, 16 and 13. So yeah, I mean, Max just did a 27.5, boom, didn't set a second lap. Yuki couldn't get into the 27s at all. A 28.1 and then a 28.0. So and look, slower, right? Because Yuki did get into the 27s, but that was in Q1. However, again, look, 27.967 from Yuki in Q1, a 28 flat in Q2. So marginal. He kind of, this seemed to be the barrier that he couldn't surpass, right? He had three attempts at breaking 28, and he only just did it once. So yeah, I think finding that extra, that's what is going to be the challenge for Yuki. And to be honest, look, just to get into Q2, even though he was 15th, I think you've got to take that as relatively speaking, given all the context around that seat, you got to take that as a win. I really do think so. It might not sound it, but I think he's done okay. Now, look, I think people will be quick to be like, well, of course he's done okay. It's way better than Liam. He's not P20. Look, couple of caveats. Okay, I do think it's important to remember that this is a track Yuki knows very well. Liam never raced Australia and you know, missed his FP3, which took away a lot of preparation on that day, on that qualifying day, if we're just looking at qualifying sessions. And then obviously China was a sprint weekend, so around a track he'd never raced once again. So I think as much as the pressure, Yuki seems to have thrived with the pressure, and he's also driving a track that he knows well and has been competitive in around at the past. So it's way too early to make any broad... Like, it is too early to know whether this swap is the right swap, for sure. It's way too early to know that with any degree of certainty. However, what we have seen, I think, bodes quite well. Again, especially FP1, especially Q1 as well. And it's just finding that extra bit. That's where the confidence thing, right? You know, driving a car up to... Even a skittish car like the Red Bull, driving that up to 90% is one thing. Driving it from 90 to 100% is a completely different thing. And that's, again, where Max comes alive, and how Max was able to put in an absolutely phenomenal qualifying performance, putting it P1. Damn, Daniel. Impressive. But yeah, I think that kind of covers the long and the short of it. And thank you, Ragav, for the super chat as well, by the way. That lap has cemented in my mind that Max is a clear step above Leclerc, Russell, Norris. Also, thoughts on Yuki being within a tenth without the mistakes. I'm assuming you'd say within a tenth with his Q1 laps, which, yeah, he was, again, not pushing to that absolute margin. I mean, Max said, like, after quali, he was like, he thought he was going to crash a few times on that final lap because he was so dialed in and so right on the raggedy edge. And that's, again, the difference, that's what he can extract from that car. And because, you know, you've got 6.5 tenths between pole position and P9, you know, the half a second in Q2 splits P3 and P15. if you can't be confident right on that edge, then you're not going to get even close to it, whereas Max can be confident on that edge. And that's going to take time for Yuki to get to. So there should be no expectation that Yuki should be anywhere near Max anytime soon. It's just whether he can work towards that. And if Red Bull can see the light at the end of the tunnel almost and see that progression. And maybe that's what they'll say. They didn't see that with Liam. I don't know how you can say that after 2 weekends, but maybe that is what they're saying essentially with Liam. But yeah, like Max is the best driver in F1. Like, yes. And he just has, just unbelievable. And I predicted him to win this weekend for a reason, because again, he is very good around Suzuka. That car, even when it's being a diva, does fundamentally, the characteristics of the track align with the characteristics of the car. So it puts him in the best position to win. But the McLaren was the quicker car today. Of course it was. I mean, Oscar, again, 2 purple sectors and lost 3 tenths. First sector and only ended up, less than half a tenth off of Max. So, Max pulled it out when it needs to be pulled out. And that's what he can do. And this is, I've said it a few times now, like, damage limitation for Max right now, until we get to round 9, when the flexi wings change, then perhaps that works in Red Bull's favour. If Max can just stop the McLarens and everyone else from scampering away into the distance until round 9, then he's got a fantastic opportunity to win this title. So McLaren need to, Oscar made his mistake. Lando was, I don't think he was right at the maximum. I don't think he was. Maybe he was, but I don't believe he was. I think there was more to give from Lando's side. He didn't hook up the lap like Max did. No way. The McLaren is definitely the quicker car over a lap around Suzuka, but Max made the difference, and that's the star quality that he brings, right? And that's what you have to overcome as a Oscar Piastri, a Lando Norris, a George Russell, because the Mercedes were looking good to a point, and obviously Charles and Lewis, Ferrari, man. Looks like they're having to run the car a bit high. They're obviously deeply embarrassing what happened in China. Double disqualification, both for height Charles for weight, Lewis for, plank wear. Are they having to give away some 1 lap pace in order to make sure that they can get through a race distance? I mean, it's not a position Ferrari should be in, but if that is where they are, then my prediction for Charles world champion is looking a bit shaky, to be honest. I thank you, Gladiator Knight, as well, for the super chat. Alpine's explanation has been sorely lacking, especially after the John Noble article. I haven't read the John Noble article. Feels like Alpine have hung him out to dry to cover their own butts. Look, I think maybe, I don't know. Jack didn't turn off the DRS, and for him to not, as far as I understand, maybe I've got it completely wrong, but as far as what I've read and seen what Alpine have said and blah, 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 Jack knowingly didn't switch the DRS back off because he believed that it would be fine, or that tapping the brake might turn it off. Like, I saw some telemetry with him tapping the brake, but then I read something. Then I think maybe it was the John Noble article I read that it was like on the sim he wasn't switching it off. So, but to lose the FP1, I mean, would have learned that lesson earlier, I suppose, and the team would have admitted, because with that approach he would have just shunted eventually in FP1. It was always going to catch him out. But the fact that if that is the case, if Jack was going into, because Jack's not raced around Suzuka before, so if he was approaching this being like, oh, I can do this, and the team didn't say otherwise, then they have to take a degree of the responsibility as well. Kia ora to you, Saladin, as well, from New Zealand. Appreciate it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. I'm excited. I'm buzzing for tomorrow. I think tomorrow's going to be an unbelievable race. Rain might fall. We'll hold on that one. Do I want rain? Yeah, I kind of do. Because honestly, Suzuka's not the best for overtaking. So I think a little, start dry and then halfway in, chuck some rain down and then, boom, let them cook. And thank you, BL4X Run as well for the super. Should round 9 still have an impact? Yes. They pushed the flexi-wing changes and implemented them with China and Japan. No, they're different flexi-wing changes. So in China, they tightened up the rear wing, just kind of on a whim. They lowered the tolerance from 2 mil to 0.5 mil. But the flexi-wing changes are specifically, the round 9 ones are specifically for the front wing, and that's still changing. That they're still reducing the flexion on the front wing in the static load tests by a third. So that should still change things, but we'll see how much. Remains to be seen. Right, I'm done. Thank you all for watching wherever you are in the world. Thank you all for joining in on the stream. It's been a pleasure as always. Enjoy the race tomorrow. I will be probably similar kind of time, to be fair. Tomorrow on Sunday, maybe a bit later, to do the post-race CHINWAG, talking all about the 2025 Japanese Grand Prix. So fingers crossed, it's a banger. I'm looking forward to it. And weekly quali streams, no Drew, I cannot lock into this. Occasionally, maybe I'll do a post-quali stream and a post-sprint stream sometimes, but only when it works around my personal life, for want of a better term. So yes, thank you all, Aaron, Playbotium, Jan, Drew, Mumazing, Lotus, Avkid, McFillin, Rayner, and the rest of you. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.